Alright, we're going to do the front brakes on this 2012 Mini Cooper 1.6 non-turbo. First thing is to find a good spot to jack it up. There's not a whole lot of lift points, so we'll find a good spot to jack it up. Put the jack stand up under it and get started on it. We're also going to replace the brake pad wear sensor that is located on this front driver's side. It's not one on the passenger side of the front. There's also a wear pad sensor in the rear passenger side. So there's another video for that if you want to check that one out. First is to break the tires, the lugs loose. 14mm, we'll crack them loose, make sure they're not super tight so we can spin them off once we get the car jacked up. Alright, so I misspoke on the lugs for the wheels are not 14mm, they're 17mm. Next will be to take the caliper bolts off. These are 13mm. Sometimes the pin will slide a little or spin while you're trying to unscrew it. You might want to hold it. Take those off, and then this should come off, but sometimes needs a little persuasion. Let's see if maybe we can persuade it a little bit. There we go. It's taking the it's taking this persuasion. Yeah. Just walk this off carefully because we don't want to break it. I have broken the caliper pistons before by prying on them, getting a little reckless with it, and see, it just comes right off. And we'll set that right there. I think that'll be fine. I'll keep an eye on it so it doesn't fall over. And the pads, really, these front pads don't look bad, but we're mainly doing this because of the condition of the rotors. We see, look, here's the wear pad sensor right there. Same better days, but yeah, so we're replacing the rotors as well, and that's the main reason for this. But yeah, because these rotors are leave much to be desired, not very good at all. So we're just going to find a Torx to fit that. It looks like maybe a 30, but I'll let you know when I find it. Alright, so take that bolt off right here that was holding the rotor on. It was actually a T50, and it would not come off. I had to put a breaker bar on it to get it to come off. And then once that come off, then the rotor was seized to the hub, so I had to smack it pretty hard to get it to pop loose. And so, unlike the back of the car, you could actually take the rotor off without removing the brake caliper bracket. This car, not so lucky. You've got to remove this caliper bracket in order to remove the rotor. So 16mm bolts, and so we'll take these off. I already broke them loose. There we go. And then there's our rotor. Get out of here. There we go. Now we're ready to proceed with new rotor. Put the bracket back on, clean up these clips, put new pads on, compress the caliper, which this one, the back one, you had to spin it in, but this one looks like it can be compressed. This one looks like it can be compressed to squeeze it in. So I'm going to see real quick if it can be compressed or not. So yes, this one can be compressed like the way they should be. You should not have to. I don't know why you gotta have a tool to screw them in. Sometimes it's just weird. But this one is good. You just compress it, little C-clamp. We can make room for new pads, ceramics. All right. So the new rotor, I like to do this when I go to tighten these up. When ones that have the bolts, I like to go ahead and put a couple of the ropes in to hold it in place so everything is centered. Helps it center everything up before I tighten it all down. Oh, come on. There we go. Struggling to get on there. T50. Alright. And stick the caliper back on. And then we'll be good to go. Before we put the new pads in and the caliper back on, it's always a good idea to pull these pins out that are in the bracket. It's what the caliper bolts to. They slide back and forth inside the bracket to keep the caliper itself centered on the rotor, so that the rotor doesn't, so that the caliper squeezes it, you know, even on both sides. I have seen these pins seize up, and I had to actually, it was on a Camaro, I had to replace the whole bracket because I just could not get the pin out because it was stuck, seized hard in there. But yeah, it's always a good idea to pull these out, clean it off real good, and just re-grease it, stick it back in there. It takes a couple minutes, and it's just always a good idea. You don't never want to skip this step. Alright, so this one right here, I usually just spray a little WD on it and clean it all off, because you don't want WD mixing with the grease, it'll liquefy it. But now we'll just gob some on here. It ain't got to be super gobbed on, but just gob it on a little bit. I'm just trying to spin it in easy so you get all that grease up in there real good. And bam, that's it. Takes 2 minutes. It's such an easy thing, you really don't want to skip that step. Alright, on these brake pads, they are specific where it goes in the rotor. This is the driver's side that has the wear pad indicator sensor. This is the side that gets the sensor. See how it's wider, the sensor clips into it. This side is not. So on the brake itself, it goes just like this. There is the new sensor, and it clips into that particular pad that has the wide spot for the sensor, which is on the inside pad. The outside pad doesn't matter because there's no sensor there. There it is. The sensor comes up, runs up, goes down, it goes back inside of here, and then you can reach in this hole right here. There's a cap that goes over this. You can reach in and do, wiring work up in here, but it's up in here. It's this white one right here. So hard to see. That's it. So there it is. Easier access to get to it. It's very important. Now we're ready to put these wheels back on, or this wheel back on. This wheel is so light. They make a tool that you can help to line it up right here, where these are the weird type lug nut bolts. But they make a tool that you can thread in there and help slide it on. This wheel is so light, you can literally do it with one hand, as I'm demonstrating. See? Boom. It's on there. Put a bolt in it. Make sure it's lined up first. There we go. See, one-handed. These tires are so light. Very convenient, especially when, like, on my truck, they're probably 50 pounds a tire. But yeah, these are so light. It's probably ain't 20 pounds. Yep, we'll do a cross pattern, put the other two in, cross it, then set her down, and move on to the next side. But the next side is going to be the same as this side. So, happy wrenching. It shouldn't be too bad. They're not bad at all, not on the front.